All right. Today our topic is slope. So we're going to learn what slope is and how to find the slope of a line. So if you look here, on the first side of the page is your slope reference sheet. So this just gives you the types of slope. We have 4 different types of slope. First, we have positive slope, which we read slope left to right. That's on your paper, and that's what that means. We read the graph left to right, just like we read words. We read the word positive slope left to right. We start at the left side, we go to the right side. So we read graphs the same way. We start on the left side of the graph, and we work to the right side of the graph. So if our graph starts at the bottom and works our way up toward the right-hand side, that's really going up the mountain. So if we had a person on this line, they'd be walking up the mountain, which means you have a positive slope. Now the opposite, if we read the graph left to right and we go down from left to right, we have a person, maybe skiing down the slope. They're going downhill, down the mountain, so that's a negative slope. And then our other 2 types of slopes are the special case slopes, which is zero slope and undefined slope. So zero slope is for horizontal lines, so lines that go left to right. Then there are those y-equal lines that we talked about 2 note sheets ago. And then for vertical lines, so straight up and down lines, they have an undefined slope. So it's for vertical lines. So vertical lines are straight up and down. And they're the x equals lines. Just a little refresher there on our special case lines. Those have zero slope or undefined slope. All right, next piece, if you flip your paper over, this is really the main piece that we want to really understand, how to find slope. So let's start here in this box in the middle. What is slope? Slope describes the steepness of a line. Describes the steepness of a line. We refer to it as rise over run, or the change in y over your change in x. This little triangle here is the Greek letter for delta, which means change. So that's why we use a triangle there. So that really means the change in y over the change in x. It's how much your variables are changing by. So to find slope from a table, the first thing we need to do is find the change of the x and y values, and then write slope as your change in y over your change in x. So if we look at x, how much are we changing by as we go from 1 to 2? Well, we're changing by a positive 1. We're adding 1. From 2 to 3, add 1. From 3 to 4, add 1. How much is our y value changing by? Well, from 2 to 4, that's adding 2. 4 to 6, that's adding 2. 6 to 8, that is adding 2. So that means our change in y is 2. Our change in x is 1. Right there, change in x, change in y. So to write our slope, we would do our change in y over our change in x. Change in y is 2 over change in x is 1. So our slope for that line would be a positive 2, which means when we graph that line, it would go up the mountain. It would be a positive slope. All right, for our second example, we have, again, we need our change in x. 0 to 2 is plus 2. 2 to 4 is plus 2. 4 to 6 plus 2. So our change in x for this line is a positive 2. Then for our change in y, negative 5 to negative 10 would be minus 5. Because we're going down, we're getting more negative. Negative 10 to negative 15 would be minus 5. And negative 15 to negative 20 would be minus 5, so negative 5. So our change in y is negative 5. So to write our slope for that line, we do change in y over change in x, which is negative 5 over positive 2. Your slope will be a fraction, so don't be scared of that fraction. And we are going to leave our slope as a fraction. We do not have to change it to a decimal. We can leave it as a fraction. Finding a slope from a graph. We choose 2 points on the line, count the rise, then the run, and then write the slope as rise over run. So, if we look at our graph, first we're going to choose 2 points. It doesn't matter which 2 points you choose. I'm going to choose this point and this point. I would recommend choosing 2 points that are right next to each other. Don't choose like this point and then this point where there's a bunch of points in between. Choose 2 points that are right next to each other. Then we count the rise. So how much do we have to go up to be level with that other point? And then our run. We make this little like slope triangle here is what we call it. So this is our rise right here that I'm shading in blue. How much we go up and down? And we went up 1, 2, 3 jumps. So we're going to say 3 is our rise. So rise is equal to 3. And then our run is how much we go left and right. So how much we go over. So we count 1 jump, 2 jumps. So we took 2 jumps. So our run is equal to 2. And then we write our slope as rise over run. So our rise is 3 and our run is 2. So that would be our slope. Looking at the graph, we are starting at the left, going to the right. We are walking up the mountain. So it is a positive slope. So we can leave it as a positive 3 over 2. Alright, the last 2 boxes here we have from an equation. First step is solving the equation for y. Wants to be y equals. Number 2, slope is, we call it the rate of change. So it is next to the variable x. So your slope is actually technically called the coefficient of x. That just means it's going to be the number that comes right before the x in any equation. Okay, so it's going to look like that, or it could be like 3 over 2x. It's always going to be the number that's right in front of, so right before the x. So if we look at our first example, y equals 2/3 x plus 7. Find your x. The number that's right in front of the x is your slope. Now please notice that I do not include the x in our slope. The x is completely different from the slope. The slope is just the number 2/3. Not 2/3 x, it's just 2/3. For our second example, our equation is not solved for y, so first off we need to solve it for y. We can't identify the slope unless it is y equals. Then your m, which is the variable that we use for slope, is right next to the x. So first off we need to subtract 2x from both sides. 2x minus 2x is 0, so now we're left with 2y equals 4 minus 2x. Undo the multiplying by 2 with divide by 2. We get y equals 4 divided by 2 is 2, minus 2 divided by 2 is 1x. Find your x and the number next to the x. Also you need to include that sign. The number next to the x is -1, so our slope is -1, which is very different than if we would have just taken the number next to the x at the beginning, which is 2. So your slope wasn't actually 2, it's the number next to the x when your equation looks like that, y equals mx plus b. Alright, and then the last piece is from 2 points. So if you're given 2 coordinate points, you can find the slope. Label your x coordinates and your y coordinates. Find the change of y and the change of x by subtracting. Then write the slope as the change of y over the change of x. Alright, more importantly, we need to know our formula for finding slope of a line. which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You will be using this a lot, not only in this chapter, but also in the following chapters, so make sure you understand how to use this. Now we need to label our coordinates. So this is an x-coordinate and this is a y-coordinate. This is an x-coordinate and this is a y-coordinate. We need a way to distinguish the coordinates. So that since this is our first coordinate, we're going to call this x1 and y1. This is our second coordinate, so we're going to call this x2 and y2. That's where we get those little numbers from. Now we just replace the numbers in our equation, the letters, excuse me, of our equation with numbers, and then subtract. So y2 is right there, -2, minus y1, which is right here, 3, over x2, which is right there, 1, minus x1, which is -2. Subtract. -2 minus 3 is -5 over 1 minus -2. Remember, this double negative becomes one big plus sign, so that becomes 1 plus 2, which is 3. So our slope would be -5 over +3. That's all the notes I have for you today. Thank you for watching this video, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel.